Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is Brad Kearns. I cover health, fitness, peak performance, personal growth, relationships, happiness, and longevity. So slow down, take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and pursue your competitive goals in all areas of life with great intensity and passion, but release your attachment to the outcome and learn to have fun along the way. That's the theme of the show. Here we go.
When people become a victim in their own head, it is the most dangerous place to be. When you put responsibility on somebody else for your happiness, you're really setting yourself up for failure. Every generation changes and adapts to the environment, and along the way, human beings search for meaning. They search for meaning for their own personal existence. They search for it in the spiritual realm, in religions, in science. Everybody spends their mental energy saying, what is this for?
Here's a quick thank you to our sponsors. They make this show possible and the tremendous production behind it online and in audio. Thank you, wildideabuffalo.com. Grass-fed, locally raised on the Great Plains for the last 130,000 years. Quit eating that junk food feedlot cattle and get some quality meat into your life. And thank you, DNAfit.com. Cutting-edge genetic testing, delivering customized diet and exercise recommendations for your peak performance. Use the discount code GOY30. Get over yourself. Integro Probiotics make this fabulous liquid probiotic high potency. It's called Flourish, so your microbiome can flourish. Gut health is everything. Get started. Visit entegrohealth.com. And Tribali Foods, pre-made, creatively flavored hamburger and chicken patties. When you're in a rush, drop one down, fry it up. It's delicious. Tribali. And Almost Heaven. That's the name of my sauna. These are beautiful home-use saunas made of real wood, shipped to your door, easy to assemble, and then you are rocking. That's right, I'm going from chest freezer cold therapy into the hot barrel sauna. Check them out at almostheaven.com. And the Primal Blueprint online multimedia educational courses. To go primal, go keto, get a stand-up desk going, master the challenge of endurance training. Go to bradkearns.com and click on the links to learn more about these courses. If you're sick of my voice on the podcast, you can now get sick of my face too on the videos. And ancestral supplements. This is grass-fed liver, organ meats, and bone marrow delivered in a convenient gelatin capsule. Don't stress about cooking liver anymore. Just pop some pills or throw capsules into a smoothie every day like me. I don't. For me, 'cause I live a boss's life. Now this is for the B's and the C's and the D's and the H's and the G's, putting work in overseas at ease. Welcome to another awesome show with Dr. Wendy Walsh, America's relationship expert, 2017 Time Magazine Co-Woman of the Year for her role in the Me Too movement, calling out the sexual harassment environment at Fox News. What a powerhouse. We had the most incredible first show where I was able to lure her into my childhood bedroom for the recording, unlike Bill O'Reilly, who was unable to lure her back to his hotel suite. And that was the beginning of his downfall when Wendy told her story a short time later, why she wasn't on Fox News anymore. Oh my gosh, and we have all kinds of opportunity for more playful banter relating to the location of our second recording. And I feel fortunate, I hope you do too, to be able to catch her during her busy life running around as super mom and high-powered peak performer. And she talks about some of her peak performance attributes and strategies I think you're going to love. But we go quickly and hit it hard and cover an assortment of interesting topics, especially picking up where we left off at the last show, talking about important attributes for a healthy, long-term, loving relationship. And we also talk about parenting strategies and observations motivations and how to counter some of the impure and disturbing influences of modern culture that are messing with the parent-child relationship. She hits it hard. She's provocative. She gave me so many memorable insights and quotes. Oh my gosh, what she said about helicopter parents, thinking that it's all about the kid, but it's really all about them and their ego. That one blew me away. I'll never forget that. Then, as we near the end, we segue into some profound philosophical insights about the future of humanity. Something for everyone in this recording. And then she gives a very interesting plug for her new podcast called Mating Matters, available on iHeart Radio. Listen to this. Hosted by psychologist and relationship guru Dr. Wendy Walsh, Mating Matters explores the secret evolutionary motivation for virtually every human behavior. Billy Crystal made a similar observation in the movie When Harry Met Sally, with a little more crude language. But evolutionary motivation for virtually every human behavior, can you see where this is going? Back to the plug. We are here to reproduce, and behind everything is a desire to increase our mating opportunity. Season number 1 of the Mating Matters podcast looks at how concealed fertility has created the sexual double standard, and why high testosterone men may be lousy husbands, why religions make rules around sex, and how dating apps biohack your brain. It's a beautiful show with high production value and quotes interspersed, so I guess here goes the unplugged, the real Wendy Walsh version. Only one microphone in use. We shared it very nicely. Maybe I should do that more often so I don't interrupt the guest as much. But let's hear from Wendy. Those levels look very nice because Wendy Walsh, can you tell the listeners the location of our show?
Should we really admit where we are right now?
I think it's a personality insight about you, how flexible and fun-loving you are and agreeable. And, of course, you had that free time in your busy schedule. So we are sitting at...
in the backseat of my car, waiting for my daughter to get out of cheer practice.
And that gives me to another punchline, because in the first show, we had the juxtaposition of Bill O'Reilly trying to get you into his hotel room. And then I easily got you into my childhood bedroom, and now we're hanging out in the back of your car. So we've gone from bedroom to back of the car, and we're just in a groove here.
That's just how you do podcasts. You do them on the fly, quick and dirty.
Welcome to the modern media, folks. Yes, we got great feedback from the first show. A lot of hilarious emails and people liking your style. Very fast-paced, fast-moving. Love the insights they've stuck in my head, which is very rare for listening to all the content and putting out so much. But the top 3 things that men are looking for in a partner, and the top 3 things a female are looking for, that was pretty fun information. And so now I'm wondering, you're in this match game. The dating game is flourishing. We have the internet and all that stuff. And then people pair up. And then what we see around us in our examples of our peer group and in our own personal lives is there seems to be a lot of unnecessary struggle and drama and challenges with 2 people just trying to enjoy, in many cases, prosperous, healthy life, but not able to just take the smooth road.
Well, I would argue with your word unnecessary. Because I think relationships are a gymnasium for our minds. And if you don't have some resistance, you're not going to build some muscle. And part of growing emotional intimacy and a bond is, relationships are one big compromise. And you're going to be tangling from time to time. Hopefully, you're going to have good conflict resolution skills. You're going to have good communication skills, just like you would need to have good form in a gym. Or you're going to pull a muscle, right? So in the same way with relationships, they are a struggle because they are a conflict between autonomy and union. And too much autonomy means no intimacy. Too much union means fusion, and nobody can remember whose problem is who. And that's not healthy either. And so relationships are filled with this conflict. And then relationships vary in what their purpose is. Some people have relationships to raise kids, to build businesses, to simply share expenses, to have a great sex life, which they think will last forever. And so then they have to talk about the byproduct
what this relationship is producing. And both people need to have a voice and some input. Otherwise, somebody's going to feel left out.
Why won't the great sex last forever?
You really want an answer to that question? It's a scientific question. So lust evolved in us to bring people together, hopefully long enough to get pregnant. And it is a cocktail of neurotransmitters and hormones, neurohormones, like my favorite one, oxytocin, dopamine, norepinephrine. And it's designed to be the best drug we have. But like any drug you take, your brain develops a tolerance for it. And you may need more and more, or you may need more excitement or more stimulation to try to create that same feeling again. And so good love relationships evolve from the lust phase into a love phase, into a respect and commitment phase. And the best relationships evolve even further into what I call mature companionate love, where it's not like the sex goes away, but it's not the primary thing. In other words, at the beginning of the relationship, it's 90% sex, 10% love. At the end of the relationship, it's 90% love, 10% sex. And that's good.
And are you saying this from data? And this is actually kind of proven over decades that you're talking about a healthy relationship, obviously, because there's the 90% sex, 10% love, and then they break up because they find out that 10% isn't too fun or whatever. But if you have a healthy relationship, that's the trajectory you might be aspiring to, let's say.
Some people actually forget to fall in love. In other words, they stay in that lust phase, and then when their brain gets used to the hormones and neurotransmitters and it's not feeling as good, then they think they've fallen out of love. But they forgot to fall in love, because love is, well, it's an action word. It's a verb. It's the verb to give. And when you find somebody who you are willing to give, I always say, all you have to give in a relationship is 60%. That's it. But if you both give 60, you got 20% of love left over to give to everybody else.
Why is that so difficult?
Well, some of it is cultural. We live in modern American capitalism, where for the last 60 years, a mobile workforce was needed to leave their families of origin, to leave the complicated, multi-generational relationships of friends and families and communities and villages. And what we've done is tried to make our primary love relationship our entire village. We want our spouse to stimulate us physically, to stimulate us emotionally, to stimulate us intellectually, to be there when we have problems to solve. When that work was done by a large group of human beings throughout all of our history of evolution. So that's why it's so hard. Our expectations are completely askew. We want it to be just everything when it doesn't need to be. And then the other thing is that we're in a culture that preaches individual rights and freedoms. Individual rights and freedoms. Love is nothing about individual rights and freedoms. Love is about compromise, where two people can accomplish so much more together than they ever could as an individual. But to get into that headspace is very hard when from the beginning we go from womb to dorm room, and in between we're sent, in cribs down the hall with monitors and told to cry it out and self-soothe and be independent. And then we get in our love relation and we're saying, you got to learn to be interdependent. And that's hard.
You think it's more difficult today because we have... I can do better right away with my online tools. And so there's always grass is greener is one of the symptoms of the culture. And also perhaps the, I don't know, like the age of narcissism where the helicopter parents raise you to be the center of the universe. And then if your partner does so much as put you a little bit off to the center, you're put out and you all of a sudden fall out of love and all these conclusions occur.
It's actually the opposite. So kids are really, really, really smart. And if parents protect them too much, praise them too much, kids know they're lying, right? And so actually kids grow up to feel less than because they know that the adults around them were lying. Like, I wasn't that great at baseball. Why are you having a whole party for me afterwards, right? And so in their love relationships, they need to play that out. They need their lover to see them who they are, and they believe they're less than. So they have to mess up and have their partner be mad at them, and that's honesty to them. I know it's really complicated. So I also think, by the way, before we judge parents who work so hard to protect and grow up kids, back when parents were more hands-off, when parenting wasn't a verb, it was invented in the 70s, the word parenting as a verb, kids were mostly raised by siblings. And they were raised by grandparents, and they were raised by the neighborhood, and they were raised by their cousins, and parents said, come home when the street lights come on. And that was pretty much it. They kept a roof over their head, they gave them some food, they told them, there's the school, go get educated. But in those times, life was simpler. Life was safer for kids. Now, to raise a kid with two parents who are working full-time, no help of siblings or grandmothers. Grandmothers are off having martinis in Florida. It's hard for parents, so they have to give it their all, and their all being whatever is left over after they have two careers.
Are you seeing a lot of trends where we can identify that this is the age of the helicopter parent and they're overparenting or things like that?
I actually think that kids are not being put first. What I see are parents in their own narcissistic adult lives and not making the necessary sacrifices for their kids. Listen, we're on the planet for 80 years if we're lucky and healthy. We get to give 20 of them to our kids, right? That's it. And the other 60, go to those parties, find new partners, have fun. But why are you dragging your kids through all your romantic transgressions? Why are you dragging your kids while you're trying to grow up and find yourself? Stop. Grow up and be an adult for 20 years. That's it.
I feel like I'm seeing some black and white here, where you can clearly identify that pattern where these parents are, dropping their kids off and outsourcing all kinds of things. And it used to drive me crazy. Like I was coaching soccer. I coached everything. I wasn't going to let another man get between me and my son with his sporting experience. So I had to be present all the time and running the show until high school. And then you're supposed to give it over to the professionals, which is also a highly recommended thing. But I saw like completely uninvolved parents that, didn't care. And then a whole nother segment here of the parent that's living and breathing through their kid and way overboard on every little thing, such as their writing their college essays for them and writing their scholarship applications and screaming on the sideline instead of letting the coach do that kind of thing.
Well, that's actually not a helicopter parent in my mind. That's a narcissistic parent who's using their child as an extension of them and their ego.
That's right. They're not really putting their kid first. They would get into defensive mode if you accuse them of that, but they're trying to live out their own dreams through their kid rather than say what's best for my kid. Wow, that's a twist on that one.
You know how to create a successful kid? Just stop and watch them grow. Just stop and pay attention to what they say and believe what they say. Every kid comes out completely different. I have two. One daughter is a high achiever. Never in my life did I ever say, is your homework done? Because it was done plus all the extra credit work. And it was just done because she was self-motivated. That's who she is. The other kid, she's got some learning disabilities, some invisible disabilities. She's painfully shy. She has super high visual intelligence. She's a great athlete. She's going to go to fashion design school or somewhere. She's brilliant. And my joke with the high achiever who's at an Ivy League school is, watch, this little one, she's going to be the most successful because for sure she's the happiest right now because she doesn't care. She's not pushing herself like crazy. She's like, I don't know if I even want to go to college. And we're like, cool, you're so mindful about it all.
Well, how do you measure success too? And as a parent looking at my kids are now just into adult age and they've had so much messaging pounded upon them by the culture. Regardless of where their achievement level lies, every kid, it seems like, is looking toward the lights are shining on them and they're being judged for every little thing they do. And so I'm trying to spread the opposite message to say, figure things out. Don't worry where every single thing is going to lead, especially your college major. and try to battle against the main forces that are coming into their brain.
I think the definition of successful parenting is if you do your job well, you work yourself out of a job. You make an independent human. And secondly, the definition of success for a child is if a child is happy, they're successful. And what I love about this millennial generation is that they are not chasing money the way their grandparents and parents did. They are global citizens. They are politically active. This next generation, I feel so confident that I will be in their hands when I'm a little old lady and they'll be running the show. I'm actually very happy with how this generation is turning out.
And the ones that are chasing money are going to have such an easy time of it because there are only 3% of them instead of 23. They're just going to start crushing it. And you see some of these kids, launching into careers. My friend's son was a moderate college student, frat boy, graduated from a non-distinctive school, just a normal school, and he's making six figures as his first job. And I'm like, are you kidding me? People grind their whole life up the corporate ladder. And so I guess it's out there for some of them.
Well, this brings something to mind. When we talk about intelligence, there are so many different kinds of intelligence. And I believe that emotional intelligence and social intelligence trumps intellectual intelligence or academic intelligence. There's artistic intelligence. There's athletic, Kinesthetic. There we go. Kinesthetic intelligence, even nature intelligence. When I'm teaching my developmental psychology class and we're going through the 8 kinds of intelligence, we get to the nature one and I say, raise your hand, anyone in this room, if you could be dropped by a helicopter in a forest and we could come back a week later and you would be alive. And there's always like 2 dudes who would raise their hand because they know how to do that. That's intelligence.
And speaking of the linear ones where you're excelling in the sciences or what have you, we're going to get crushed over the next 50 years by India and China because they outnumber us so much. And Fareed Zakaria already wrote a book talking about how the economy is going to change. It's like you want to go get a high-paying computer programming job in Silicon Valley as an American, you're outnumbered 13-1, and guess what? Those guys will work harder for less pay because we've been spoiled here by, decades of affluence and just having to, be moderately driven and still get a nice gravy train. So if you want to look elsewhere to other forms of intelligence, now's a good time. You young listeners out there, emotional intelligence, Wendy Walsh says. So cool.
Because AI cannot do emotional intelligence or social intelligence yet. That's the problem. And when you're talking about Fareed Zakaria's book, I don't know if you're talking about a more recent one, but the one I remember is called The Post-American World. And what he says at the end is so important. He says, we're not seeing the fall of America. We're seeing the rise of the rest. We are seeing the rise of India, Mexico, China, Brazil, Canada with all the natural resources, right? And they're going to be good competitors. They are being good competitors on the world stage. But one thing America still does best is education. But we have this crazy brain drain. So all these other countries send their best and brightest to our higher educational institutions, and then they take them home again to compete against us. And he believes that the way to win this war is to keep them once they get here.
Or I guess the cynic could say, don't let them in the first place. And then you're looking at the...
Terrible!
Yeah, I mean, the applications at the University of California, it's like a quarter of the freshmen admits are now from out of state, out of country. And then there's taxpayers here in the state that have lived their whole lives wishing to, send their kids to get a high-quality education. And the competition is enormous. And if you want to be ranked in the top 10, as Berkeley and UCLA are, they have to let in the most excelling students. Otherwise, they're going to drift down because of their rankings and all that. So... it's right. We have to awaken to the reality rather than get negative about it and embrace that these other nations are rising. And then, boy, if you want to carve out a niche for yourself in a competitive world, it's time to start thinking in a bigger picture than just getting A's in your classes and doing the resume building activities.
Exactly. We need to think about building strong social networks again, not the kind that are just online with a bunch of likes and clicks, but actually getting together in the real world. It's interesting that I, have huge followings online at Dr. Wendy Walsh, on everywhere, but I mostly do business when I go to an event and I actually meet a human and we chat. And that turns into a business relationship more than all that online nonsense.
Wow. So there's a exponential improvement from doing things in person. That's why I like to meet you in random parking lots for the podcast rather than just Skype and go through my question number 7, Wendy, is, but speaking of questions, you said emotional intelligence is your favorite. And Chris Gage on the Medium, she writes about relationships, fantastic stuff, really short and pithy. And she said the number 1 relationship attribute is emotional self-stability, and was so big on that there's no sense talking about number 2, number 3, number 4 unless you have emotional self-stability, unless you can hold it together yourself and make your way through life without flipping out and going off the handle on a daily basis kind of thing. And
that doesn't mean not having feelings. That doesn't mean not having strong passions. That doesn't mean not expressing anger or fear or sadness. What it means is taking responsibility for your own regulation and understanding that another person cannot make you feel any way. It's already inside of you. You've decided to, on an unconscious level, decided to use this person, in psychology we call it this current object, as the trigger for you to explore something that's going on inside you. It's always only about you. Now, I know people will say, well, what about the concrete example that my husband parks the car on a weird angle and I can't fit in the garage and I got to go get his keys and move the car, and he does it like 3 times a week and he does it to drive me crazy, and he knows how it makes me so mad and he knows that it hurts me and he still does it. And my answer, I've made this up by the way, I don't have a husband that parks crooked, but my answer would be, who frustrated you this much in your early life? Why do you need this frustration right now? And, the best definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So why are you driving yourself crazy by continuing to nag him when there might be a whole nother solution, like not letting certain things bother you or remembering all the things you love about him as you climb up the stairs to borrow his keys to move the car?
this one's hitting hard. And I think, on my best days, I'm striving to be that person that just keeps giving up to that 60% as recommended by Dr. Wendy, or, giving all I have out to the world, to my kids, to my relationship, to parents, friends, whatever, and not being in the scorekeeping mode where you're waiting to see what's coming back. I think that's a recipe for sadness, frustration, depression, relationship conflict. So that I'm accepting that advice and realizing it's all about me. We should take a breath here. Everyone should go,
I do want to say very clearly, we all have to put our own oxygen mask on first before we can give to somebody else. So therefore, you're also responsible for your own boundaries. So when I talk about giving, we don't want to be people pleasers to the point that we deplete ourselves. So that's the fine line in have that conflict between autonomy and union, right? So once you have everything that you believe you need and you have cared for yourself with the kind of self-care, and I don't mean endless longing for stuff that never makes you happy. I mean, whatever it may be, time to exercise, time to meditate, time to socialize with friends, whatever you need for you. Once you've done that, you will find that you will be left with a well of love to give to others.
So now we're talking about some common occurrences, which is the doormat, the martyr. And so they are fighting that losing battle and heading toward insanity, because the more they give, the more frustration they build or whatever, rather than the desired outcome. So we got to talk about how we're gonna overcome that. And now it sounds like we're coming back to a place where we have to bring in communication, resolution, negotiation. Because if the dumbass parks his car in a crooked manner every day and begs out of no me culpa, is in Spanish, it's not my, don't accuse me, or it's not my fault. I'm so busy and absent-minded, and I was on a phone call, and they're making the excuses, and you start to disrespect their their excuses and their mindset and their disposition, because it does come off as disrespectful if you ask them over and over. How are we gonna solve this in this hypothetical example of the crooked model?
Well, I would start by being thankful for the garage. And I would be really thankful that there's a garage there in the first place. And then I would think about the entire relationship instead of this one moment. And I would think about where they do give, when they give, how they give. Here's the cool thing. The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. If you imagine your spouse is great, you will report that you have a happier relationship. If you only see the weeds in your garden and only water the weeds, she always does that, right? If that's what you're doing, that's the thought pattern in your brain, then you're just going to be looking for more evidence of what you believe. But if you believe that your partner is a good person who loves you, then you will look for evidence of that.
And then it'll manifest. Yeah.
Oh, and it does grow. That's the other thing. Did you know just by speaking to the highest part of somebody's brain, by complimenting them, that you will grow that? They will rise to the occasion because they're like, oh yeah, that's right. That is who I am. And they will behave that way. There's a thing that Melanie Klein had come up with years ago called projective identity, that you can project an identity into somebody and they will actually behave in that way.
Oh, so if I call Mia Moore, my girlfriend, the queen, and pretend she's a ancient Aztec princess come to life in modern times and treat her like a queen, she will then become the queen.
Yes, and her attire will change too. It'll be fascinating.
Fascinating transformation with her color-coordinated specialist shopping for new clothes because she's a queen now. Well, I accept that solution, that you be grateful for your freaking garage and the freaking car that's parked sideways and all those things. Speaking of cars, we had a party next door to us come in, chatty from finishing shopping, get in the car and drive away with no sound. So this show is sponsored by Tesla and the quietest, most fantastic back seat where you can record a podcast with yapping going on and outside, and you guys didn't hear one thing with a high-performance microphone. Amazing.
I know, it's wild. Can we just talk about Elon for a minute? He is my celebrity crush, if there ever was one, because he
doesn't have time for you. He works 100 hours a week.
And he dates supermodels. And also, yeah. And did you know his mom is a model? She's like in her 70s, and she's a mature model, and she's beautiful. Anyway, so I don't know that I could actually have a relationship with Elon because I think he is crazy, but you have to be crazy to be changing the world the way he is. And so I love everything he's doing and every way he's doing it. You know, as soon as you buy the Tesla, the next appointment that shows up are guys in beautiful black jackets selling you solar panels for your house because you're going to be plugging your car in. You're now using electricity, and he wants you using the sun, right? And they work out this whole payment. They ask for your bills ahead of time, your utility bills, and they work out this whole payment that's actually cheaper than what you're currently paying in utility bills, and it pays off over time, etc. So it's like a no-brainer. Like, why would anyone say no to the solar panels if it's cheaper than what I pay the DWP?
Oh, yeah, and you start getting a check, theoretically. If you have a lot of sun, you start sending power back to the grid.
Well, yeah, you don't get a check. I think you give your power back, right? I don't know if you get it.
I don't know.
No, I think... Anyway, you can choose to be on the grid or off the grid, and I believe that we are all connected and we are a community, and you need to stay on the grid.
Well, also I talked to the endurance athletes about the single most dangerous thing they do by a multiple factor is riding the bicycle out on the open road, because you can die every single day in every single workout, and that includes going down to the bike path, and just you're asking for trouble when you're mixing with cars. And so probably number 2 for all of us, if you're not a bicycle rider, is driving, right? There's a lot of trouble out there, and now we have a car that's proven to be many times safer than the average car because it has smart braking and all these intelligent features.
My car stops faster than I could ever get my foot to the brake. My car shows me when there are cyclists around the car. It actually shows pictures of shadowy cyclists coming up on my right or left. There are no blind spots because there are all these cameras around the car. And of course, it drives itself. You know, my favorite button is the summon button. So I have this app on my phone. And let's say I came out of a restaurant and I didn't want to walk to my car in high heels. I could hit summon and my car would drive to me and pick me up like a chauffeur.
I've seen that demo. And so, like, intellectually, I realize here's my kids out on the open road, and the most dangerous drivers are the ages from 16 to 29. And so, really, if you love your kids enough, you should get them brand new, giant Teslas and, have them driving the safest car, and then you can sleep well at night after, forget their college tuition. College is overrated and, all that stuff.
Keep them alive. That's what we need to do. Keep them alive.
I mean, on a serious note, and I talk to my biking friends, like, really think twice about what you're doing. And if you insist on riding and you can't live without your bike ride, get in your car and drive 14 minutes or 9 minutes or 27 minutes to a safe area to do your exercise on the bicycle, because it's just a bad idea otherwise.
You see those, not even the big groups of cyclists, because at least they're more visible, but the individual guys on the racing bike coming up PCH in Malibu with the cars going by 50 miles an hour, 24 inches from them.
Every day, that was my life. I lived on PCH. I had the nicest backyard in America, the ocean over the deck, and then the worst front yard. Literally, you can't get a worse front yard than the highway. I had a trooper with the old swinging door, and I had to wait till there was a break in traffic before I could open my car door and get my groceries out. So we have our plug for a safe and highly functional car. It'd be nice if everybody got them, and then there'd be no accidents, or there'd be much fewer.
Now the Tesla Model 3 is out, and they're pumping up to full production. I think they're coming out with 5,000 a week, and so hopefully everyone will be able to afford electric cars. And the other car manufacturers have stepped up because they felt the competition from Tesla, and now everybody's doing it. My favorite question that was asked to Elon Musk during the 60 Minutes interview is, it's weird, like every time you come up with some new green technology, you don't keep it as a secret for your company. You put all the plans out on the internet for any engineer to use. What if the other car companies do it faster, better, and put you out of business? And he goes, then I've won. We've still saved the planet.
That's pretty cool. I remember that. Got to give him credit. And you're shaking your head like, is this real? And it's real. Yeah. Open source, car designing and all that stuff. Awesome. So I was drawing this connection between you want to have that emotional stability, and you want to come from that place of gratitude and giving in a relationship and not sweat the small stuff. And then earlier you mentioned what happened to you when you were a child, or what traumas are you bringing into mind today? And that could be the reason why we have difficulty getting there. And for example, shrugging our shoulders, being grateful, going upstairs to get the keys to move the crooked car, and going on with our day. And I feel like we have such an easy time slipping into battle mode or defense mode, especially in a love relationship where our emotions are on our sleeve and we're very sensitive to how we're being perceived.
It's when people become a victim in their own head, it is the most dangerous place to be. When you put responsibility on somebody else for your happiness, you're really setting yourself up for failure. And while I believe that a good relationship is an exchange of care, and that care can take many forms. It can be sexual care. It can be physical care if someone's sick. It can be intellectual stimulation care. It can be financial care. There are many ways that we care for each other. I also believe that you have to practice a degree of self-care. And when I talk about emotional regulation, the trick is to step aside from your feelings in the moment and watch them. Create a little gap like you're watching a movie. That's why I teach my health students mindfulness meditation, because it teaches them how to step out of their feelings and watch their feelings instead of letting their feelings run their behavior. And that is the first step to emotional regulation, is first just watching it. Do you know why journaling works so well when people are feeling depressed or angry and they put it in a journal? Because when you go back and read it, you are now the watcher. You're not in it anymore. You're able to see it. You know, you can even take scenarios where you went, oh, I messed up so bad. I'm so embarrassed about that. And you can rewrite it in your head to help heal yourself. You can forgive yourself. You can learn that what happened to you, you know what? Your parents, believe it or not, did the best they could with the tools they had. And they were probably given some really bad tools. So you can forgive your parents. You can forgive yourself. You were a child. What did you know, right? Then you can become an adult and take full responsibility for all your feelings.
What do you say to someone who's jaded enough to offer a quip back, like it's too hard, I can't do it, or anything like that? They're not buying in.
Yeah, well, happiness is a choice. You don't have to choose to be happy. You don't have to choose to have a fulfilling life. I mean, I don't judge people for the walk that they have in their life. I try to understand people. I spend a lot of time trying to understand human behavior and have compassion for human beings, but I never judge. Although earlier in this podcast, you mentioned that I was sounding very black and white when it came to the kid thing. You know, the only thing I gotta get on a soapbox about is parenting, because I can see the intergenerational cycles of trauma that happen in families. So I'm just like, wake up, adults, wake up, please, solve your stuff so that your kid doesn't inherit it. Because we're all destined to finish the emotional work of our parents. It gets injected into us, partly through our DNA physically, and partly through what was taught to us and how they behave. And so it's up to us to kind of break the cycle and become independent thinkers and learn really how to love ourselves. And when I say love, I don't mean being selfish and saying, oh yeah, I love myself, I'm going to buy myself all these things. I mean literally knowing deep inside that even though you're a human being, you make mistakes, stuff happens, you feel embarrassed for things, you get mad at others, that you still are basically a good person, and you work on growing compassion and caring for others, and we fail sometimes, and other times we succeed. And when we do, it's okay to feel proud of yourself too. That is self-love.
I think you can take little baby steps here and build momentum really well. So if you can even have one nice exchange at the grocery store where you said, oh, go before me, you look like you're in a hurry, or have some measure of comfort that, or you handled an altercation on the road and kept your cool, and you can kind of build on that.
So what you're talking about is something so interesting. While I mentioned there's a thing called projective identification, we can actually project an identity into people and they will take it on and they will behave that way because we believe that's who they are. There's another thing that happens, and I call it the environmental feedback loop. It works like this. Our feelings shape our behavior. Our behavior impacts on the environment. The environment feeds back our feelings. So if we wake up with a black cloud over our head, we go out in the morning and believe that the barista at the coffee shop is going to rip us off somehow, or they're going to take too long, or they're not going to put the heavy cream in, they'll only do the half and half, some problem, then you will start out grumpy, you'll project that onto others, and for sure they will feed it back to you. And then you will have confirmed your belief that people are bad and the world is bad. But if you get up and you tell yourself, on this day, something really great is going to... This is a trick I do for myself, by the way. Some mornings when I'm really bored and there's nothing exciting on my schedule, and I know that humans love excitement, I say to myself, oh, something really great is going to happen today. Oh my goodness. I tell myself this. I'm lying in bed. It's still dark. I'm half asleep, half awake, and I go, oh my God, this is the day. You know that feeling when you're a kid and you wake up and you know it's Christmas? I muster that feeling and I go, oh, this is the day. And then I'm like, oh, but I don't know what it is. So I've got to look for it all day long. So everywhere I go, I look for the magic in life. And when you're looking for it, you flip and see it everywhere. Like today, I cut into this Japanese pumpkin, which I'd never cooked before because it came in my farmer's basket. It was green on the outside. And inside, there were these beautiful seeds, and they were laid out in this array that just looked like a complex piece of jewelry. And I had just a moment where I was like, wow, this is beautiful in here. But had I woken up with a cloud over my head looking for badness, I would have said, this thing is so hard to cut. It's so hard, right? Instead, it was a present that I opened and found a pearl inside my oyster with the way the seeds were laid out. So life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that good will happen and you will find magic, then you will. Guaranteed, you will.
Oh my gosh, the Bruce Lipton stuff, the biology of belief, and get him proving the scientifically, like when you walk into a room and the energy feels kind of low, or you walk into a party and the energy is electric, it's a literal truth at the molecular level. And so when you walk in with your smile into Starbucks and you think you're just being a nice person, you're actually changing the molecules in the other people's bodies, and all around it has this effect that we don't see it, but it's been proven to be accurate. All these sensations that we have, like when you don't connect with somebody and it just feels flat, it's literally true, and so is the opposite.
And we make it happen. You know, life, people always think, oh, bad stuff happens to me. Only bad stuff happens to me. You know,
Yep.
bad stuff happens to everybody, but plenty of good stuff happens too. But it just depends on what you focus on. You know, I use the example. You know, when you decided you've saved up and you're going to buy your very first car, that was always a big day for everybody in their life, right? And so when they finally figured out the make and model of what they're going to buy, and they've almost got the money together, all of a sudden, at every intersection, at every red light, every car passing you in back, you see your car. You see the year, the color, the make, the model, exactly what you've decided you want it. You see it everywhere because that's what you're focused on. Those cars were there the day before. Happiness was there yesterday. You weren't looking at it.
You know, I've talked about this frequently because it's the theme of my show, Get Over Yourself, and that's the big message that I have from my time as an athlete when I was in this highly intense competitive environment and so driven and so focused and wanted to win so badly and was bringing that type A, you know, massive competitive intensity to every day of my life and taking myself so seriously. And that's when I struggled and suffered and fell apart. And I feel like I've had to work through for years and decades getting over myself, you know, manifesting my happiness and my lighthearted, you know, those parts of my personality which are there, and allowing them to come out and predominate over that person who's got some message like, you better work harder so you can, you know, have self-esteem associated with your high performance in the competition or in any other measurable thing. And so I feel like I've made progress along those lines, and now there's a chance where I have the tendency to be too positive and having too much gratitude and looking on the bright side so much that I don't face the difficulties and challenges in my life in a responsible manner, because I can always look on the bright side.
Well, I think what you're talking about is avoidance, which is different. That's like ignoring every problem out there until it grows bigger, right?
Or just, you know, I'm seeing it as not a big problem, and at least I'm alive and healthy if I'm running out of money or doing things where you should be sitting in your shit maybe and making some plans and some strategies rather than just breezily thinking, well, at least the sun's out and I had a good Pilates workout this morning.
Well, you use the word at least, meaning that you're feeling like this is the least you could do instead of the maximum you could do. And, you know, part of being a human being is finding that balance, because what I hear you talking about, Brad, is balance. So when you were an athlete, it was all about competition. It was all about working out. And you were tunnel visioned in that way. And now your tunnel vision is about, you know, having some lightness of spirit, perhaps, having some more positive energy. But, you know, life is also working out, like doing the work you need to survive and for your family to survive, paying your dues, spending the time doing that, doing it in a joyful way, doing it with, you know, not just like, I'm going to do this for the money, but doing this like, how can I make this day interesting, because there's also a value payoff with the money. It's all about attitude with everything we do. But avoiding problems and avoiding goals is not the same as just looking on the positive side.
I also feel like we're getting this message frequently about just manifesting the life of your dreams, and a lot of this breezy talk. And when people cross over that threshold and start to sound too airy-fairy, I kind of shut down or I smirk, because I'm coming from the athletic experience where you were timed and this is your finishing time and this is your placing. And there was completely graphic and black and white, rather than being able to talk a good story at the bar so you can impress your date with a bunch of blather. And I think we're trafficking in the social media era with people putting on this presentation and crafting a brand and crafting an image which is disconnected from their reality, where whatever they're thinking and feeling. And I don't want to be one of those people. That's why I'm identifying myself as at times too positive. So I need to sit down and face my uncertain financial future with more responsibility and more reality, rather than saying, oh, I'm just going to manifest more money every time I run out.
You're misunderstanding. I have a to-do list every day of my life. And sometimes it's filled with drudgery that I do not want to do. And so what I do to make it a little more fun is I make sure that I always schedule in a reward. So I look at my list in the morning and I think about what is the thing I don't want to do the most, and I make sure I do that first. And I find the thing I want to do the most, like I want to jump on it, and I turn that task into my reward at the end of my list. So, manifesting is not the same as not doing. Manifestors are doers. All the word manifest means is making a plan, making a to-do list that will get you down the road. I also use this metaphor a lot because people will say, what are your goals? What are you doing next? I always say, you know what? I'm walking down a road. I have a goal. And if I don't keep moving towards that goal down that road, I will never see all the forks in the road where I could potentially make a right or left turn. Sitting home manifesting is not going to allow me to see that road. It's not going to allow me to see the right turns and the left turns, the opportunities that might be presented to me. But having a goal and shooting for it is step one to being able to see other opportunities.
And possibly failing and having setbacks and being forced to recalibrate and using them all as growth experiences.
Yeah. If you ask the most successful people why they're successful, how they're successful, I don't know if they're aware of this, but they will say, because I failed so much, because it didn't work. And, the human brain, more than anything, loves to adapt to a hostile environment, and while doing that is problem solving all day long. Human brain loves to problem solve. And this is what failure does. Now, if failure turns up into beat up self-esteem, oh, I'm not worthy, I can't. If those words fall into your brain, you have some other internal work to do. But if failure is, shoot, that didn't work. Let me try another way to get over this wall. Maybe if I dig a hole under, maybe if I get around the side, or maybe this wall is not as big as I thought. I should turn right and there's no wall there and do something different, right? So, I think sometimes for people when it comes to failure, especially if they're putting a lot of time and energy into a new business that's not becoming successful, is you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You have to know when to walk away and not throw, for instance, what do they call it? Good money after bad money. And that's hard for people to let that failure go and go, you know what? That didn't work out. I once built a website and I did the stupidest thing. I did the tech before I did the market research because I just wanted this website to be so beautiful. And I wanted all the bells and whistles and what you clicked on and what it to be. I didn't even know if there was going to be a market for it. I just had an instinct. There had to be. And I got $10,000 into building this website. And then I'm like doing a little market research here and there. And I'm like, this was a bad idea. And I just shut it all down. I went, well, I learned something important there.
Well, it takes a lot of strength because you're disengaging from your ego that needs it to finish just for reasons outside of market research.
People get stuck on things and then they can't move forward. And then there are other people that don't persevere enough and they're jumping around too much. If it's not like an instant jet train, they're like, but you have to, there's something in between that works.
Yeah, I spent $175 on this website idea and then I ditched it, right? That's the in between. Like, really? So what did you try again? Oh, you made 2 phone calls? Right, you went in hardcore. Yeah. And I think that's furthering you on down the road of advancement.
The most important thing I did, like I was having this frustrating moment with this website and I was trying to get a little traffic to it and it was so beautiful. I wanted to tell the world about this business idea. And I went online and I found like this business coach who actually had an MBA and she said she would get on the phone with people for only $300. Now I'd spent almost nearly $10,000 at this point on the website. And I'm like, I'm going to call this woman. I'm going to get dead honest answers. So I sent her my website, I gave her my business plan, and she got on the phone with me, and she had no problem just going, well, where's your market research? Well, how do you know? You didn't test it? And she's like, tech is the last thing you build in an online business, the very last thing. And I'm like, oh. And it was just like, I was like, I am not going to stay attached to something that is just going to drain me and not move somewhere. And people do that. But the big successful people have many, 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 many failures like that until they hit on the one that works.
They probably have a lot of expert consultation and coaching. I like how you reached out for that $300 and maybe saved you $7,000 more. Who knows?
I'm a big believer in asking professionals for everything. I reach out and I get information. I'm not afraid to make an appointment with somebody and go, how does this work? Or why do I do that? And it's very helpful.
Dang, I like that. I need some more inspiration in that department because I'm kind of reluctant. I guess it's difficult to let go and trust sometimes.
I think it's the guy thing. It's the ego thing. Women are very good at asking for directions.
I'm good at asking for directions because I don't like to waste time. So that was like that distinct example. I always had no problem rolling down the window or running in somewhere, but now we don't have to do that anymore. But, finding someone trusted with more experience and more expertise than you, boy, that's a real winning strategy.
And having enough self-confidence to ask questions. Other people are like, oh, they won't answer my email. They won't take my call. I'm like, you won't know till you do. As Wayne Gretzky says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's my favorite saying in life. Doesn't hurt to try.
I got another favorite Wayne Gretzky exchange, which was he was talking to a parent of an aspiring hockey player, and the parent said, Wayne, I got to get this kid to practice more. What's your strategy like? What did your father, do for you? How did we, what can I do to inspire him? And Wayne said, no one ever had to tell me to practice more.
That's how it goes. You just follow your kids and their likes and their desires and see what they're interested in and take them to that.
Right. You're the caddy or the door opener, but not the orchestrator, not overly orchestrating things. I've found that too in practical experience, the times where it was their idea, it was a great idea. And when it was my idea, it was a really bad idea. I think that's Dr. William Hughes in Sacramento. He wrote a book about parenting, and that was like his signature thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's it right there. Now, follow-up question. I'm concerned on the adult level and all these peak performance attributes you just expressed, like your to-do list and you're going out and getting coaching, and now we're talking about the kids too. And I feel like we're getting overwhelmed with technology and distraction to the extent that we're atrophying all these great personal peak performance attributes like staying focused. What do we do about that? And then on the kid side, what do we do when you see your kid withering away hours and hours of wasted time and not being motivated to do anything?
Well, don't we sound like an older generation person talking about these young kids, right? Listen, Elon Musk says we're already cyborgs, except part of our brain is already outside of us.
That one tripped me out. And the explanation was, well, if you have a phone in your hand, then you know every single fact that's ever been discovered in the history of the universe. I'm like, oh, shit, you're right. The population of California is 38,974,399. Oh, my gosh. That one tripped me out. I'm already a superhuman, super freak robot right now. Brad Kearns and Wendy Walsh were both super freak robots.
Yes, and I'm sitting in my Knight Rider car that Elon made. And so the question is, I look at these kids who are digital natives, who have been brought up literally staring at screens. We can complain all day long that their brains are not being used sufficiently. But you know what they're really good at? They know where to access information, how to get information, when to get information. As we enter the Blade Runner age, these kids will adapt. They're adapting their environment. And every single older generation looks down at the younger generation and said, remember when we used typewriters and when we drove horse and carriage, right? As if somehow the past was always better in some way. But human beings are always adapting to their environment. And, are they becoming less intelligent? Maybe. Did you know that for like thousands of years or hundreds of years anyway, the Bible, nobody wrote. It was translated by people had it memorized, right? It was memorized. We had such better long-term memory and we could hold huge bodies of information in our head. So we've already evolved past that, right? And so we're changing. We're not necessarily, dying. It's our intelligence is being used in different areas is what it is. And these kids are smart. I mean, hand your iPhone to any 14-year-old if you need to get anything done quickly. And boom, boom, boom. Just the processing speed and the ability to instinctively feel out a website. And they've got it figured out.
Are you concerned on any levels of some of the attrition of important human skills?
Well, I'm a scientist, so I try not to judge. I will say, how can we predict what form of human connection is needed for future survival? We are survival of the fittest, and certain traits are adaptive to the environment. Now, as a human living in 2019 on the planet in America, my stomach dies when I think that close human attachments and love may evolve out of us. May procreation be something that's done in labs? There's enough sci-fi movies and books showing that, right? Will men and women separate in some way? I think I had a neuroscientist on my podcast the other day talking about how dating apps biohack us by creating these rushes of dopamine with every match and every message. And then on another time, people might be using pornography for their testosterone and estrogen. So they're sort of piecemealing a kind of relationship that's biohacking them without actually being with a human being. So who knows what the future will hold for us? I just want to sit back and watch it all.
Aren't you concerned for your daughters that their experience is going to be possibly dramatically diminished? Or, different is the way you describe it. They have the sex robots now that'll be lifelike and do anything you want, and you can dress them up like a cheerleader, like Charlie Sheen, without having to pay them and all that great stuff. But it's like I feel some sensitivity to the future generations just because of the great richness and value of the things that are most special to us could be outsourced, like you said.
I guess we have to ask ourselves, what is it to be human? What is the meaning in our life? And where does love play into it? If my great-great-grandmother came back and landed today and was sitting in this car with us and said, where is your natural food? We're trying at least to get good food in our bodies now. And why haven't you been with one man for 40 years at this point? And where are your grandchildren at this age? And why isn't there a man paying the bills, right? We're talking about, she would see the changes in gender roles, probably the first thing that would be. And then she would say, and why isn't, if there was a husband, why isn't your husband on your Facebook page with you? Why isn't there one phone number? Why is there's a phone? Right? So why
aren't you driving your car? Why is your car driving itself?
Exactly. And so every generation changes and adapts to the environment. And along the way, human beings search for meaning. They search for meaning for their own personal existence. They search for it in the spiritual realm, in religions, in science. Everybody spends their mental energy saying, what is this for? And hopefully comes to a feeling of contentment or satisfaction with the answer they come up with themselves.
Whew. That's heavy.
And you wanted to talk about me kissing Dennis Rodman, I thought. How did we get so heavy?
That was first on the list. Eric Coburn would be disappointed if we didn't hit that. And if you don't know who Dennis Rodman is, folks, he was the greatest rebounder of all time in the NBA. Crazy guy, had this wild party lifestyle off the court with his dyed hair, and I think he wrote some best-selling books. So you guys have that in common. Is that how you met, like at a book event or something?
No. Back when I was a player chick, literally, I think hormones so much dictate our stage of life stuff. And so back in, I'm going to say in the 90s, I was a local news anchor in Los Angeles, and I would go off air at like 10 o'clock at night, hair and makeup ready, having just had my last cappuccino an hour before. And so I had my name on the list of every nightclub in LA. And I happened to run into him in the back room of a lesbian strip club. I didn't know why I was there. Someone said, go to this club. And anyway, we ended up just sort of making out a little bit. I don't know why. It was my young player chick days. And maybe I'm doing it only so as an old lady, I can go on an athlete's podcast and say this and tell the story. Maybe I just wanted to have experiences to chalk up.
I guess we should put that like in the title, Wendy Walsh talking deep matters of life and also hanging with Rodman or something to pull in the ratings. So you had a player chick phase, and then you had a super mom phase that we learned about last time, where you took yourself off the market, you said, and you went 100% into the child rearing.
I breastfed for 6 years.
Wow, they're like almost up to the height where they don't have to. They can do it standing.
3 years each, 2 kids. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was putting you in that Waldorf mom category where the kid just walks over and lifts up. Okay.
There was that too. They're 3. Boy. They were 3.
They're pretty tall. Yeah.
Yep.
So what's your reflections and what does the future hold? Double question.
You mean what phase am I in now? I am in the wisdom phase. I have fully embraced aging. I love it. I love it. I love it. You got to understand, Brett, I was a model. I moved to Paris when I was 18. I had the same brain. In fact, my processing speed was much faster, but nobody could hear me. Nobody could see me. They were just distracted by the beauty. And I know I'm the poor plight of the pretty girl. I'm so sorry. I know what you're saying. But the truth is, my face has grown into my brain, and I love it. I'm at the best age in my 50s. I love where I am now. I love the sense of accomplishment that I've had in my career. I love that I've built a degree of financial security. I love that my kids have turned out okay. The kids are okay. I'm so happy. My daughters are now almost 16 and almost 21. And I feel like I have so much ahead of me. I have all kinds of new secret goals too. So it's just an exciting time for me.
I'm not asking you to reveal the goals, but I'd love to know what is the significance of a secret goal rather than blabbing the goal to everybody who will listen.
That's a really great question. The goal isn't really secret because I'm going to tell it to you because I tell everybody my goals because I can't believe it myself yet. And when I fully believe it, then it will be less secret. And my secret is that I want to end my life working in public policy, helping families everywhere. I don't know where. I don't know when. I'm thinking 2022. Don't know what race. I'm on the short list for a program called Emerge California, where they train women to run for public office. And I have my interview on January 26th. I hope I get it. And it's a 5-month training program. And I read somewhere that Madeleine Albright didn't get her first real job till she was 55. And look at her now, right? I am so healthy and I am so happy and I have so much wisdom and I just care a lot. And I want to now, if I raised my children and was successful, now I want to raise the culture a little bit.
What kind of office would you target? Is that secret?
There are many. I'm going to go where I am called. If I need to move to another state, I will do that. If it is citywide, statewide, national, Congress, I don't know where I will be called. But if I tell enough people that I'm available, listen, I have the skill set to be a politician. I have excellent communication skills. I have a well of compassion inside me, and I have thick alligator skin. That's all you need.
Those are the big 3 right there. You're set.
Exactly.
I like it. And it's also so much of a, it's a mind game where the candidate is sort of manipulating in the public in so many ways, especially with the rousing speeches. And you can, I think, come from your heart and talk about things that, have backed, just like on the show today when you're saying this or that, it's backed by science, backed by research. You love doing that stuff. Yep. And so you'll say things that are significant and they actually have weight behind them, I hope.
I have built my life's reputation, accidentally, not on purpose, by being a truth teller. When I was a kid, I would always say, why? Why do they do that? Why is this? And especially if adults weren't talking about something, it drove me crazy. I needed to know. I don't like secrets. I like the truth. And as you know, I the universe lined itself up where I became the woman who spoke out on behalf of victims of sexual harassment at Fox News. And, my attorney at the time, Lisa Bloom, a dear friend who I love, said to me, listen, because I was afraid of these, big guys and lawyers in New York. And what if they sued me? What if I lost my house? I'm a single mother. And I was so afraid. And she was like, listen, in order for them to prove a defamation lawsuit, they have to prove that you lied. They have to prove that you knew you lied. And they have to prove that you did it with malice. That is a very hard bar to reach if you're telling the truth. And I said, well, I'm telling the truth. And she said, then you're fine. You have no legal worries. And so I realized looking back that my entire life has been that way. I mean, I tell truths to a fault. If I think about any kind of conflict I've ever gotten in with somebody, it's because I told a truth that they didn't want told. Not necessarily a secret disclosure, but commented on something I saw that was very obvious and observable. The elephant in the living room, the emperor with no clothes. I'm the one to go, look what I see. And I think that in politics, that will be refreshing because there's a lot of lying that goes on. And you know what? If people don't vote for me because they don't agree with my issues and my truth, okay. I'll shut down that website. Fine. But why not try to be real and authentic and caring and compassionate and just help families live a better life?
So why is that telling the truth to a fault at times? Why did you say that?
Because people carry a lot of shame and people carry a lot of secrets and people live false, artificial lives. And the last thing they want is somebody shining the light on what they're saying or what they're doing. And so whenever I've had minor interpersonal conflict with anybody in my entire lifespan, I look back on it and I'm like, why did we get in that argument? What was that about? And I'm like, oh, I touched a tender spot. They didn't want that discussed.
So I guess you could make the choice to let it go rather than identify that they're manifesting their childhood traumas with their blowing up over a minor relationship issue. You could point that out and be accurate, or you could just go with the flow as the other choice. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, I don't run around analyzing everybody I see, and I also don't insult people, especially if I know if they do have a tender spot. But accidentally it happens sometimes. You're just like, wait a minute. You met that guy 4 months ago and you're already married and all your friends are rushing to the wedding shower and nobody's going, have you even had a fight yet? I asked that question. Girls didn't like that.
I see. Okay. Dr. Wendy Walsh, telling the truth as always on the podcast. What a great show. Thank you for spending the time during cheer practice.
Should we tell everybody that we've really steamed up the windows in my Tesla?
That would be a nice way to close the initial quips and comments. And now it's getting really steamy back here. No one can even see we're recording the podcast. We're even more private. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And send your emails. getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. We're gonna find Wendy someday in the future. And
can I do a plug?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, I can do a plug. So I am launching a podcast. I don't know when yours is airing, so forget about timing. Go look for a podcast called Mating Matters. I'm producing it with iHeart Media, and it looks at human behavior through a lens of reproduction. Basically, I believe everything we do is related to human mating, and it's filled with the science of human mating. So it is now, I'm sure by the time you're listening to this, it is. It comes out Valentine's Day 2019, the series, and it will be wherever you get your podcasts. It's called Mating Matters with Dr. Wendy Walsh.
Mating Matters, and it's going to be a series on this issue every time? What kind of format?
So it's 25, 30-minute podcast. It's well produced. I have a great producer, Brooke Peterson, with lots of sound, and I do a lot of interviews for it. And the first episode is called, for instance, Hidden Eggs, why we have concealed fertility and how that makes men behave and women behave, and why strippers make more money when they're ovulating. Long story, you got to listen to the podcast. The second episode is called The Trouble with Testosterone, how you can tell the difference between high testosterone men, low testosterone men, and the two things that make high testosterone men monogamous. I'm not going to give it away. And then the third episode is called The God That Clubs, and I look at how religions form rules around sexuality, dating, marriage to help increase their membership. Then the fourth episode is just called What is Love? The biological, sociological, psychological pieces of love. What is love? And then what else do I have? Oh, sexy money. Why pursuit of money is really a pursuit of sex, and the high supply sexual economy and how the price of sex changes depending on its availability in our culture. And there's another one, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I know we just did. Oh, dating apathy. That's what I was talking to you about, how dating apps biohack our brain. And there'll be many more.
That is a heavy episode load. I am all over that. Mating Matters. Dr. Wendy Walsh, thanks for the plug. We're going to jump all over that. Valentine's Day 2019, releasing once a week. We're just going to grind through those.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do, because I've been working on them for about 4 or 5 months, because they're well produced with a lot of sound, etc., and interviews. So we're going to release 2 the first week, and then 1 a week. And then by that point, we'll have caught up and we'll have a new one every week. You know, we want to bank a few of them before we get going. Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, do you want to hear an advertisement? If I sing it, would that be a little more palatable? I know that we sometimes get annoyed listening to ads on podcasts. Go ahead and hit the +15 or the +30-second button if you don't want to hear this. But I've also been exposed to some cool products and services when I listen to ads on certain podcasts. So once in a while, or more than that, I'm going to talk about stuff that I really use and enjoy and completely support. No BS. I absolutely promise that to you. And here's one thing I'd like to talk about, which are the awesome online multimedia educational courses that I created and host at Primal Blueprint. You can learn all about them, primalblueprint.com, and click on the courses button, especially the brand new 21-day Primal Reset. And this is kind of our entry point into turning around your diet and your lifestyle, getting healthy, escaping from the disastrous condition of carbohydrate dependency that plagues us in modern life, and becoming fat adapted, but you're led step by step with a series of videos every single day with objectives for 21 days to clean up your diet, ditch those bad foods, those grains, sugars, and refined vegetable oils, get your exercise program optimized, and believe me, it's not that difficult. It doesn't take that much time. A 5-minute workout can deliver awesome benefits. And I'll also take you through all the complementary lifestyle practices, like getting your sleep habits dialed in. It's a lot of fun. I guide you every step of the way with great video content. That's just one of the courses. We also have the one for endurance athletes, all about the world's leading experts and everything from the Primal Endurance book brought to life. And of course, the Keto Reset, the New York Times best-selling book about going keto if you've already built some momentum with a low-carb diet. Just go over there and check it out. And because you're listening to this ad, I'm going to give you a super duper top secret 20% discount off of your enrollment on any of those courses. And that is the code BRAD20. Tell your friends. Go for it. Make some changes in life. Do it the right way with complete guidance from me. If you're sick of my voice from the podcast, maybe it's time to switch over to video. But please go over to primalblueprint.com and check out the courses link of the great educational opportunities we have. Thank you for listening to this lengthy ad, and I appreciate you listening to the show too. Hey, it's Brad to talk about my buffalo-fueled lifestyle. Yes, it is incredible food, 100% grass-fed and finished. Check out wildideabuffalo.com. They have a wonderful website acquainting you with the benefits of eating a sustainably raised animal. From start to finish, it goes beyond organic, where they're in harmony with the environment and you're eating the ultimate nutritional quality animal. It's something to really think about, consider, and appreciate when we think about the disastrous contrast with the horrible, miserable life of the feedlot animal who's stuffed full of crappy junk food, including candy with their wrappers on sometimes. Oh, mercy. When you taste this, when you take one bite of a buffalo steak or a buffalo burger, cook it plain if you want to do a proper test. Just take it with nothing, no seasoning, no spices, no sauces. Take one bite and you tell me if I'm wrong. Nope, I'm going to be right. Wow, Brad was right. Everyone who eats Wild Idea Buffalo's right. WildIdeaBuffalo.com. Check them out. Try some. Go look in the finer health food stores and chains, or order some directly from the website. Wild.